Impacts of climate change on South Asian monsoons. My name's Keegan.
I'm Roger.
I'm Theo.
And I'm Jonathan.
So what are monsoons? Monsoons are large-scale seasonal wind and rain patterns that deliver most of the annual rainfall to South Asia. They're caused by temperature differences between the land and the ocean, which brings moisture inland and causes a shift from a dry to the wet season. Climate change presents major environmental and political challenges for the people in South Asia and for governments as well as weather patterns shift.
So why are monsoons important? Unlike you see on the news, monsoons are actually really vital for everyone in South Asia. Billions of people rely on it for farming, agriculture, and also water supply. If monsoons change from climate change, it will it will negatively affect their livelihoods and also potentially damage the regional economy. So now we'll talk about climate change and how it's causing monsoons to shift. The main thing with climate change and monsoons is that it will not cause monsoons to have more rain, but instead make it monsoons much harder to predict and rain more erratically. As you can see on the graph on the right, the average rainfall per day has not shifted a whole lot between 1985 and 2015 compared to 1900 to 1930. The main difference is that the red fences are much wider, which means that the variability has increased over this time frame in every single region. This will cause much more intense rainfall, which means that sometimes storms will dump inches after inches of rain within just a few days, and it will also cause longer droughts. This is all has to do with human-induced global warming, and although some regions might be losing rain overall, it will happen in much shorter window.
Here's some charts that actually depict this trend of extreme rain events. So on the left, this is a heat map that depicts rainfall over India during a particular environment. Darker colors, or like the right side of the spectrum, represent more intense and concentrated rainfall, while the other side represents less concentrated rainfall. And as you can see, the overall trend in the country of India is that it's growing towards the right. So there's more darker colors, and especially in the central regions of India, it's basically all on the right side of the spectrum.
The second graph shows the average daily rainfall over a 250-year period with like 70 years in the future predicted as well. So as you can see in towards the later half of the 20th century, rainfall has dropped overall a little bit, but it's now starting to climb again. And according to four different climate models, the rainfall is expected to increase much more drastically as time goes on.
Um, with climate change impacting monsoons, there's an increased risk of the severity of natural disasters. So obviously, with climate change, the temperature in the air becomes warmer, right? And that allows more moisture to be stored in the air, which means that when it rains, there will be more moisture to convert to rain, and that's dumped on regions, which causes more intense and deadly rainfall. Um, so in these small, obviously, they basically shrunk the entire monsoon season into pockets of very concentrated and intense rain. And obviously, these can lead to severe flooding, and in certain regions, also landslides, which are very detrimental to infrastructure and can lead to the loss of human life. Because the rain is now condensed into these pockets of intense rain, there's longer periods without rain, which are like dry seasons, and those can lead to severe droughts. So if you look at the right side is a chart for the SPEI index for droughts. SPEI index basically is like the difference between the amount of precipitation that you need and the amount of precipitation that you have. So a negative SPI index is not a good look. And as you can see, as we move into the 1990s and the early 2000s, there's a significant downwards trend with it even peaking at over negative 1.5, which means that certain regions are in seriously danger of being in drought conditions. Increased variability in the monsoon season also leads to difficulties in preparation and planning for it. So many farmers will try to plan their crops so that they can get as much out of the monsoon season as possible. But if the monsoon shifts, for example, for 10 to 14 days, off track, then it becomes really hard to predict and it can ruin an entire year's harvest. And also evacuations, the government, if they want to evacuate people, they have to know genuinely when the monsoon is here. But sometimes with the climate change, that's not possible anymore because it can be off by almost 2 weeks. Obviously, droughts from these erratic monsoon seasons can lead to crop damage and water shortages. And also, roughly every 1 degree Celsius increase of the temperature can actually increase monsoon rainfall by 5%. So every time the global warming acts on a monsoon, it can cause even more rain to stack up.
The variance in the occurrence and severity of all these monsoons is driving much of the current issues that are present today. I'll go over a few examples from countries across Southeast Asia to demonstrate how this variability is causing issues. In Punjab, India, for example, increased rainfall has led to widespread harvest devastation, which has made it difficult for the region to feed its population. Last year in Pakistan, over 1,000 people were killed, a 3x multiplier from the year prior. And a big reason for that was that the monsoon came 14 days before expected, which made evacuation and preparation much more difficult for local authorities than it would have otherwise been. Droughts throughout central India are lengthening and becoming more frequent, which is overwhelming the current infrastructure systems and drainage systems that they have in place for the region, making it much more difficult to respond and repair after monsoons have hit. Some future strategies, because we know that monsoons are critical for food, water, and economic stability in Southeast Asia. The biggest thing we can do to solve this problem is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and curb global warming, to limit the extreme and unpredictable monsoons that happen across Southeast Asia. But something we can do in the meantime is improve infrastructure, forecasting, and support for vulnerable communities, which can help limit the damages and the lives lost and the economic damages due to unpredictable monsoons. Thank you for listening.